All right, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for hanging out with us yet again. This on a Friday. I love having these things on Friday. It kind of just gives you a reason to kind of bug out of work, maybe just a little bit early, which is kind of nice. And I know, and I see Sam is already here, and I know that's really what he's doing is just kind of bugging out of work a little bit early. My name's Kevin DeLong. I'm the founder of Cyber Social Hub. And so, what Cyber Social Hub is, for those of you guys who don't know what it is, it's really just that. It's a kind of a social area where there's still a ton of resources for digital investigators. It's really what it is. If you need, free webinars, there's all kinds of stuff in here. We do this thing every week. We try to do this every week, and just have a lot of fun. We have articles in there, events. We try to list it all out there for you guys, just to keep you informed in the digital investigations world. Today's show, I'm really excited about today's, just because it is a formal, I guess, institute of mine. Back in 2007, I attended some really intense, probably the most intense digital forensic training I had ever attended back then, and it was awesome. It was just 2 weeks of a lot of fun. I met some pretty awesome people. Actually, the people I met down at this training ended up coming to my wedding years later, just because that's the kind of relationships that you can build down at this thing. So I'm just going to quit beating around the bush here and bring my guest on, because he's kind of just hanging out there in the green room. So let's just pull up Gene here. He is the president of IACIS. And Gene, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Hey,
excited to be here.
no problem. Thanks for volunteering yourself, or maybe someone voluntold you to say, hey, there's the
Yeah,
bus. Let's throw Gene under that one.
it kind of comes with the title, but yeah, it was hey, we got this thing, and you're the guy. So here I am.
Right on. I'm going to adjust your image just a little bit here, Gene, because I want to
Okay.
pull you up at least above my lower third. Well, you know what? We're just going to turn those off so we don't have to worry about them no more, so we can still see you. There we go.
So you just said something that perked my ear up. That you attended the BCFE class in 2007. So we were in the same class.
Oh, no kidding.
That was when I went through. It was in 2007. There was I want to say about 160, 180 students in there, or something like that,
It
right?
it seemed like
So
a lot, because I mean,
there
obviously,
was a ton.
I was used to these small little training groups of 20. And then when
Yeah.
you get in there with all those people, it's like, holy crap! There's most graduating classes at high school that aren't this big. It was massive.
Yeah.
But I got really lucky. I sat right to the next guy from New Jersey, Mark. He ended up becoming a friend of mine. He came to my wedding, and then I sat, because I'm up near Cleveland, Ohio, and I
Hmm.
sat next to, on the other side of me were two guys from the Ohio State Patrol that were in the class too. I'm like, what are the chances of that? So it
Yeah.
was great. I can't speak highly enough. And as a matter of fact, is when people ask me, it's like, hey, what is some of the best training that we can get? It never fails. I'll push them to ISIS every time. Just some great memories of it. I still have all of my books, for the record. They're maybe a little dated at this point, but
File systems don't change a whole lot, a little bit, but that's always good stuff. But the operating system artifacts have definitely changed a bit.
yeah, just a touch. And I don't know how good I would be at any type of actually investigation now. I'd have to really break the rust off of it. Yeah, no, they weren't quite first editions there, Megan. I see. So Megan's making fun of me here with these some of these old books that I had in there. So we'll pop chats up also, Gene, as things
Yeah.
go. And I'm going to try my best to keep my eye on chat the best that I can. If you see something that's funny in there, because there's quite the crew, by all means, let me know. We like to involve everyone as much as possible.
Just as long as
Yeah.
Rich Johnson and G. David don't heckle me. So
I think I may send them money if they do, actually. It's funny. So when prepping for these things, guys, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty transparent, behind the scenes type of guy. Um, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. It's obviously, we're getting with the guest, making sure all the equipment's working just fine. And we've been working with Brent from IACIS to kind of coordinate some of the scheduling initially. and then getting you on the show here. And it was funny. We were kicking emails back and forth, and you were attached in all of them, so you could see what was happening too. And then all of a sudden, I get this email. Literally, what is it? 2 days ago, and it was like, well, Brent's over in. Is he over in Australia or New Zealand? One of those. New Zealand.
He's a Kiwi.
Yeah, he was. And I get this email like 9:20 at night, and I'm like, this is from IACIS. I said, what's going on here? Oh, Gene's not attached. What's happening? Is something going on? And I look, and it is a whole bunch of blackmail I could use against you for the show. These are my favorite kind of emails for this. So I'm just warning you ahead of time. I kind of gave you a preview of what one of the things were, which unfortunately we can't play. It was a fanfare, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that backstory, because you were there. I was not.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I attended on staff my first year in 2009, and after that event, I was asked to. At that time, we were still using Norton disk editor. I think G. David mentioned that in there too, which was just so outdated. We had so much trouble with it because DOS was dead by then, and there was even a guy in the back of our classroom, if you remember, that used to have the little circle light that said DOS is dead. I don't know if you recall that. So with DOS being phased out, going to FAT, or being able to chain the FAT in the FAT file system class was a big thing. And so I had been asked to. I told him, I said, I think we can do it in X ways, and I think it can happen. And so I was told by the director of training at that time. And he said, look, if you can figure out how to do it in X ways, then we'll have you do the class. So then we did. We got it through the proof of concept. We wrote the class for it. And the next year when we came in, it was my first time teaching FAT. And it's a long class. It's a lot. I mean, you remember, it's a lot of brain power, a lot of work. And we started the FAT class, I think, an hour or 2 hours into the day. And so I thought, well, I'm going to be funny and see if I can get everybody on their toes. So I blasted the Rocky theme, or the theme Rocky, over the speakers, and there was no instructor up there, and everybody's looking around like, what's going on? And I went trotting up the center aisle there and went up on the podium. It was kind of fun. I felt silly and stupid afterwards, but apparently it was a hit, and Brent Whale has never let me forget it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish I'd have seen that live. That's fantastic. Yeah, we can't play that theme just because of all the copyright issues on YouTube here, and where we're streaming out. So many restrictions. You got to watch it. But no, that's hilarious. Now, something I did not normally, I will kind of cue you up right behind the scenes of some of the things. I just couldn't bring it because I wanted to get a reaction from you. He sent me some personal information about you, right?
Okay.
I see the nervousness in your eyes.
Yeah. Brent's got a lot of ammo on me, and there's no telling what he sent you.
Yeah. So he says that that you fed him bear once after being in the freezer for 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of comical. My son took an Arizona as a record book Boone and Crockett bear, and about 5 years after, he took it at the age of 7, and it was really good food. It was good eating, surprisingly good. And Brent Whale and Jerry Keene were over here visiting. We went out camping. Mm-hmm. And Brent's one of those guys that he likes to check the boxes. I've done this, I've done that. And so he was like, hey, where's the bear? I know you got bear. And so we fed them bear, we fed them elk, we fed them deer, we fed them squirrel. But the only bear we had left was 5 years old, and it was a sausage. And bear's really greasy anyway. So they never let me live it down. It didn't set well with poor Jerry Keene, and he was making frequent trips, and so they never let me forget that. And now every time I see Brent, he wants to know if I've got any of that bear left. So
that's pretty funny. Yeah. So everyone's kind of making comments over there in chat. I think you can see it there from where you're at in that room there. Yeah. So. I'm going to bring up this other stuff later because it'll help break up the serious talk, essentially. Sure. So I guess a lot of people are here, and may not have an idea about IACIS. There are rocks that I hear people live under, but especially if they're new in the industry, right? I mean, I remember, being new in the industry all those years ago, I had no clue. I'm like, and obviously my department sent me down. I'm like, I have no idea what this organization's about. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. So kind of give us a little bit of background of IACIS.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I mean, IACIS, part of the reason why some people don't know about IACIS is probably because they may not be in the law enforcement field. In 2011, 2012, IACIS kind of transitioned from only law enforcement members allowed to opening it up to everyone because we kind of saw the value in having non-law enforcement. The incident response was starting to grow, and the private sector digital forensics was starting to grow, and we saw the value in that. So it kind of opened up, and we're becoming more and more mainstream now. But for the first 20 years of the existence of IACIS, you had to be law enforcement in order to be a member.
Yeah.
So what IACIS is it was founded by a group of law enforcement forensic analysts that did a lot of reverse engineering and kind of dug into the file system, dug into the operating systems back in 1989. And they got together and they said, we need to come up with a mechanism to train other law enforcement personnel because, one, there's not much training out there that exists, and any training that does exist is so expensive, most departments can't afford it. So they founded IACIS. They put all the bylaws together in 1989. And then in 1990, they were founded as a nonprofit corporation, and we basically began life in 1990 as IACIS, a nonprofit organization. And our mission at that point was to develop training for, and of course, I wasn't a member until 2007, so I'm speaking historical that I've been educated on. But the organization at that time developed a lot of training. They did a lot of reverse engineering, all volunteers. No one was paid, and everybody did it. And what's really interesting, if you ever have an opportunity to talk to digital intelligence founder Chris Stipich, he's got a lot of the history and a lot of people in incident response that use InCase, FTK, and all these tools that are industry standards. A lot of those tools and techniques and like expert witness format, those were all developed out of the founders of IACIS. And it's really amazing. I wish I could retain the stories Chris has told me, but it's been amazing as how influential the early years of IACIS was to the development of computer forensic techniques and tools. And but now we are, things have come a long ways. There's a lot of other tools on the market, that are out there doing stuff, and we try to educate in a tool agnostic environment. We want the forensic examiner to understand what is going on. What is Windows doing when you create a file? What artifacts are being touched? And then go find those artifacts and understand what those artifacts mean. Not understand what the tool's telling you, but understand what the artifacts mean. Because there's a lot of things that can happen behind the scenes a user has no idea about. But there's been cases won and lost because either an examiner didn't validate their tools or an examiner was able to validate the tools and be able to prove and stand up to cross-examination. So we offer our staple class is the basic class. We call it the basic class, but it's 2 weeks long of intensive feed me with a fire hose training. And we go from bits and bytes to hexadecimal and numbering and counting through the file systems, FAT, NTFS. When we went through in 2007, there was a lot of crime scene stuff because it was still focused very much on law enforcement. There still is some element to that, but it's not quite as involved as it was. There's, imaging collection, there's validation of software, classes that kind of teach you how to do that. And then of course we get into the Windows artifacts elements and the registry and all these different things that you can use. So when you walk away from there, you have a comprehensive understanding of what's going on. You're not going to be an expert, right? Especially because it's going to take a few months for all that information to kind of filter its way through your brain.
And to stop your ears from bleeding from all of the information you guys jam in your head in that 2-week period.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's really neat that, and I what you said in your opening is really true, that it is probably the most comprehensive deep dive training you're going to get. We have there's a lot of other training organizations out there, but few of them go into the depth that we go into over the vast amount of content, not just from numberings, but disk structures, to operating systems, and it's focused primarily on Windows. But over the years, we've also developed a lot of specialty courses. We have a mobile forensics class now. We actually had a class. It was called ACF at the time. It was Applied Computer Forensics, that kind of would compare the different tools, so you could see how different tools presented artifacts. That's been renamed now. I can't recall exactly what it got renamed to off the top of my head. It's on my list here, I think. But we've got a number of tools out there. We've developed a RAM class now. We have a scripting class, and then we also partner with some of the vendors out there. And that's some of the stuff I can go over when people start asking, like, what are the benefits of being a member of IACIS?
Yeah, what I like is, I'm looking down through, I think it was your pricing here. Now, I'm guessing I'm accurate here, and I don't know if you are comfortable talking about pricing.
Not a problem.
Because, my background is I left law enforcement and started working in corporate for some of these other training companies. And they're mainly the software makers out there. And you're right, it was not even close comparison training wise, the intensity that you get in those 2 weeks, right? And now, so how we had it blocked out was kind of like, okay, training from some of the the vendors, it can kind of pricey. I came from a small department, or what we consider a small department, where if you're going to a class and it's going to cost you $1,000 a day, they're choking and they're going, what? They're what?
Oh yeah.
And your 2 week class, now correct me if I'm wrong here, is $32.95. Is that right?
That is correct. That was just raised this last year. It came up from $29.95, because we're adding more equipment, and we are now even adding computers. We're providing, one of the things you get when you come to the basic class is you get demo software. Some of our vendors actually provide a full 1 year license for their software for the full forensic suite, that the
Nice.
student gets, and all they got to do is sign in and they get access to this. So they're getting tools, not just a demo that's 6 weeks that they can use 6 weeks after, but they're getting a tool that they can use for a year and really understand and kind of learn the tool. So we have a number of vendors that give those types of benefits to the students when they come in there. You get a full training manual. And the training manual, as you said, first edition, I mean, it's not copies of your screenshot, or it's not copies of the slide
No.
presentations. It's a white paper chapter on what we are teaching during the class. And what the
Yeah.
beautiful part about that thing is, like you said, you can sit down a year or two later and go back and read that chapter and get a refresher of what's going on. What does all this mean? What do the offsets mean? So on and so forth. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just a picture with slides and bullet points. So we have comprehensive manuals. Each student gets write blockers. They get external hard drives. They get some other flashy stuff. But one of the big things they get as well is they actually get a laptop. They get a laptop that they have with them. It's not a high end laptop. It's an average home laptop that you can use, because we recognize that not all agencies have a lab that they can do their certification in.
Right.
Some people are learning on their own. They don't have all the equipment. So we give them that equipment, and they take it home with them. They walk away with a laptop. And this last year, we have now included laptops in our specialized classes. And let me be clear on the specialized classes. Those are classes taught by IACIS and
Mm-hmm.
IACIS staff. But as you mentioned, other vendor classes are much higher in dollar amount to
Oh
what we
yeah.
offer our classes for. But we have developed partnerships over the years. We've been doing this for many years with a couple vendors, and over the last several years, we have been growing our vendor training and growing our partnerships with our vendors, so that they are now actually teaching vendor classes. They're vendor specific classes, the same class you would get if you were to go to their website and buy the class, but they're teaching it at our event at our price. And so you're getting that the members are getting a discount on that training. And the beautiful part of that is the student that gets to come, not only do they get the vendor training at a discount, but they get the whole networking experience that you get when you're at the IACIS event. I mean, we're teaching our BCFE class right now is tapped out at 300 people in a single class. And so we end up having almost 600 students come through
Oh,
in
man.
that 2 week period between the BCFE 300 and then the different specialized classes that go for a week. We have one specialized class, our incident response class, that goes for 2 full weeks. And if you notice, the incident response class at 2 full weeks is only $29.95,
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
that is a fraction of other training that's available out there. And we can only do that because we are nonprofit. Our members are volunteers. These classes and this material is developed by people who have a passion for forensics, who have a passion for IACIS, and want to give back to not just the law enforcement community, but also to the forensic community. And so we usually get some extremely high quality material and training, and we're constantly striving to do better.
Yeah, I've never taken any of the specialized courses, but I can tell you, I can attest to the basic one. Man, hang on for that one. Even if you've been an examiner for a little while, you're going to learn something. I almost guarantee you're going to learn
Well,
something.
you're absolutely correct. And there was actually some talk a while back about taking the word basic out of the class, because some people would send their examiners down there for the basic class, and they would get some pushback from their command staff. Well, you've been
Mm.
doing forensics for 5 years. Why do you need to go to a basic class?
Yeah,
And so, unfortunately, it's too far down the road to be able to change the name of it, because we got all our marketing material built around it. But it is a basic class in that we start at the very beginning. So we can teach to somebody that only knows how to turn a computer on versus somebody who is been doing it for 5 years, and
hmm
everyone is going to gain out of it. The person that only knows how to turn the computer on is going to be in the bar every couple nights trying to soak his brain. Where the guy doing it for 5 years, it's going to help fill in the gaps on where they've missed out on things that they don't get, because there's a few master's programs out there that don't get into the level that we get into.
right.
I used to work with an individual who had a master's degree in computer forensics, and they had never seen data at the disk level before in hex, and it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it was being out there that way.
Yeah, and I had to put this message up here from Richard Johnson. I grabbed it from chat. It's just true. I mean, I had been doing exams, I think, for about a year already before I had come down. Actually, a couple years, like 03. Yeah, and then going through the basic class, I was like, oh my goodness, hang on. It's just it's awesome, absolutely awesome. And just for the record, Rich is just down the road from me. I think he's in Westlake, right? Rich, somewhere over there, and here in Ohio. So he got hammered. We just got hammered with like a ton of snow. I mean, a ton of snow here, and I was but most of my morning digging out from that, which was pretty terrible actually.
I live in Flagstaff,
I
Arizona. We're
know.
at 7,000 feet, and the best investment I ever made was my snowblower. I don't know how I went so many years without a snowblower. But talking about that experience when you walk into the training, I happened to get selected. I was a detective at Flagstaff Police Department when I got my opportunity to go, and I learned about the computer forensics investigations when I was a corporal on the road. My sergeant was actually a CFCE peer review and had gone through the CFCE program as well. And I remember walking into the office and seeing him do. He was looking at Disk Edit and Norton and all that, and I just thought, man, that is so cool. I would love to learn that. Well, I went up to detectives, and there were two other people kind of earmarked to go before me. One went in 2006, and then the next person that was earmarked to go ended up promoting to sergeant a month before going to the training. And they said, well, we can't send a sergeant to that class. It kind of defeats the purpose. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah.
Heck yeah.
And I started reading the books from the guy that went the year before. So I was at least somewhat invested, and had, I could have some questions formulated in my head. And I was warned. They said, when you walk into that class, it's going to be awe inspiring. And I was like, whatever, it just didn't register. And when I walked into that class, it was like, wow. I mean, it totally
Massive.
blew me away. And we had, like I said, about 160, 180 students, I think, that year. It was pretty large. It just blew me away. And I knew at that point I had to be part of this organization. I had to give back. I had to go through the process. And so that's what kind of what inspired me to get involved.
Yeah, it was
So,
intimidating walking into that room the first time. I remember it was like, holy crap.
well, wait till you come to the event in Florida at the Caribe. Now we're doing 300 in one
I'm
single
looking
city.
forward to it. I'll be down. I'll be down in April. I'm looking forward just to kind of see how it's done now. That's great. Oh, David said I invested in three boy. Yeah,
That's great.
I got three kids, and they're not quite big enough. They're getting there to push some shovel around. That's great. So, tell me something. What is this phobia you have with feet?
Oh man.
Yeah,
All right. I'm gonna just tell you a story.
Bren's fired.
Yeah, Brent, I'm gonna kill you, but that's okay. It's gonna forever be on camera that I'm threatening your life. So when I flew to New Zealand to teach the WFE class with Rob Atto, I landed. Brent picked me up from the airport, and he was sitting next to this gal that was she's kind of grungy looking. You know, she had dirt all over her, and she was sitting there with bare feet that were just as dirty, nasty looking as you could imagine. And Brent initially introduced me to her, or her to me as his wife. Well, come to find out, he was pulling my leg, and she was a gal sitting there waiting for someone else to arrive, and she owns a farm and everything, and it was just like, wow, that was just so gross. Why would you do that? And he's never let me live it down, you know, so yeah, Brent, boy, paybacks, buddy,
Yeah, sorry,
paybacks.
I had. He sent me that email, and I was like, "How can I not say this?" I mean, anybody who knows me knows very well I'm going to use this now. Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, good hygiene. That's all I ask. Good hygiene. You're gonna show your feet. Good hygiene.
Now, you guys sold out for the basic this year, right?
Yeah, the basic
Yeah.
usually sells out pretty quick,
That's
especially since we
still.
went to online. Especially once we went to online, being able to purchase online with a credit card,
Hmm.
we get people that purchase it pretty early, and or they'll pull an invoice to hold their seat until they can do it. I would tell people that just because it's sold out, if it's a class you really want, and you can't find a class you like that's still open and available, go ahead and fill out the request, because we do build a waiting list, and because you can basically take a seat by pulling an invoice. If those invoices aren't paid by a certain date, then we start pulling off of the waiting list of people that do want to pay. So, you know, if there's a waiting list of 15 or 20 people, and we lose 10 or 15 people that decide, oh, I couldn't get the funding, I can't go, so their seat becomes available, and the next person on the list gets it. So I would recommend putting your name on the list, on the waiting list, if that's the only class you really want. But we do also have a lot of other training classes that are of value. The Being able to attend the basic class is not a prerequisite, like the cipher class, the incident response class. You know, you guys are much broader. Your list of viewers is, I'm sure, encompassing of all forensic practices, incident response, consultant firms, as well as probably law enforcement. So there's lots of good stuff. There's we have a mobile device class. All these classes, I think we have one class that's sold out, one specialty class that's sold out, and I think that was the WFE class, which is the Advanced Windows Forensics class. But we have, if you're a lab manager and you want an opportunity to learn about setting up a lab and managing a lab, it's a loss leader class. It's only $50 to attend, and it's only a 3-day class. But we wanted lab managers to be able to, and like sergeants that come in and they take over a lab. They don't know anything about forensics.
Right.
They depend on their analysts to do that. So this is a class to kind of get them involved, so they know how important training is for forensic folks to keep their training and their skill sets up. And then we've introduced, over the last number of years, we've introduced a lab preparation accreditation class, which kind of helps lab managers that are wanting to be accredited. Some of the larger labs want to be accredited. The FBI requires accreditation, and that's a fairly cheap class as well. But I think it's only 4 days. So yeah, I mean, we do have a number of classes, and of course, we also have the vendor classes. And I would just tell the listeners, I've got a list, and I can read through them. But we do have a comprehensive list on the IACIS.com website under the training tab. You can go scroll through there and see all the classes that are being offered. And if any of them strikes your fancy, then by all means set them up. We've got some classes that are, we got the one class that's an IACIS class that's 2 weeks. And then we have a couple vendor classes. Spider Forensics teaches a couple classes. And we have a number of vendors. I don't want to single out any one vendor, but it's kind of a 1-2 class from Samari, which is the Mac class. They take Mac 1, and then week 2 they teach Mac 2. So it's kind of a nice way to get 2 weeks. But it's a pretty nice feeling when you're a student trying to justify a budget, and your hotel bill for the 2 weeks being there is more expensive than the tuition.
Right,
and you walk away with all this money. So it's really something we try to give back. And like I said, any class that's an IACIS class, they get the computer as well. If it's a vendor class, computers don't come with that because that's a completely vendor class. But you get that class at the IACIS price mark.
Yeah, I keep putting the link back to your training in chat there. So at least people can see of some of the things we're talking about, because it's just too much. Even an hour is just not enough to go through it all. And I'm really, really impressed. I cannot believe I'm shocked, I guess is the better term, that you guys have managed to keep your prices even so low. Even raising them to that amount is still not really a raise, because again, like I said, I ran corporate training, and I know how much we charged. And I taught for a couple different companies, and it's insane. Normally, $1,000 a day at 2 weeks, you're looking at 10 days of training because you get the weekend off, $10,000, and you do the same thing for a heck of a lot less at $32.95.
This was the first price change I think we had done in a number of years. And when the discussion was had about changing the prices, it was so we could start giving computers to everyone. And unfortunately, we're still too low because the current climate and the market and inflation. We're not able to get the computers at the price points we were. So it may require another market adjustment next year, but we'll visit that, and hopefully things settle down and we can get back to those price points we were at before. But the goal here is to give the student the best experience possible. We're nonprofit. Yes, we like to be able to put some money into a savings account for a rainy day if we have to cover overhead or buy product for one class that maybe sells out or maybe gets canceled for whatever reason. We can sit on that, and so just your typical overhead business model. But we really do want to give back to the students as much as possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Again, I'm just still shocked that those prices are able to still be in effect. So I'm just making a couple of small camera adjustments here. Something else I wanted to talk about too. Now I know you and I talked earlier this week to kind of set up, and I know you're a big hunter, but you also have another hobby that you're kind of just dabbling in a little bit, and that's some knife making. Isn't that right?
Yeah. I'm playing with it.
So you have some examples for us, because I asked you. I said, "Hey, do you have something you could show? I'd like to see something." Were you able to bring something?
I do. I've got a couple works in progress that I've got here. You'd asked me if I had any completed knives, and it's funny because when you asked me that, I spaced out that I had my very first knife ever, but I'm not sure where it's at. I think it's down in the garage. So, but it's not of quality that I would want to share it publicly, because you're learning. I've only been doing this since October of last year. So, I'm sorry, October of 2020. What's 22 right now? 21. So October of 2019 is when I started. I've only made 4 full complete knives. One actually, yes, it will keel, Mr. Blackburn. The one knife I made was for a colleague of mine at Strauss Freeburg, who's a retired U.S. Secret Service guy, and he wanted a boot knife with a thin blue line resin handle with his retired Secret Service badge, a little pin badge embedded in the handle.
Yeah.
And it took me 4 months to make that knife, and I went through so many growing pains learning how to do it, but it turned out really, really well. And that's the only knife I've ever let leave my shop. But I've got a couple knives here. These are knives that I've been wanting to make a kitchen knife, and I've been wanting to make something called. I've been wanting to make something called Damascus, and I don't know if anybody knows what Damascus is, but Damascus is when you take and forge weld a couple different types of steel together. So like a 15 and 20 is considered a high nickel content steel, and then a 1084 is a high carbon but lower nickel content. So they contrast really well. And so this was my first attempt. And if you can see, if the camera catch the light right with the camera, you can see the layers in this. This is just a test etch because I'm still in progress on this. This is a 12-inch blade, an 11 or 12-inch blade. I'll pull back a little bit so you can see the whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
So when it's all done, I'll have my final sands on it. And when it's all done, I'll drop this into a really rich coffee etch, a coffee solution, and it will turn the 15, or excuse me, it'll turn the 1084 steel black or really dark, and then the nickel content will still have a shine to it, and it just looks amazing. And I make my own handles as well. So this is a resin handle with honeycomb aluminum in it. I pour the resin, cool. and then I've got it married to Turkish walnut. I got a friend of mine in town that makes rifle stocks, and he gives me a scrap for turkey walnut, and it's called Turkish walnut burl, and it's extremely hard, and but it's absolutely beautiful when it polishes out. But then the other knife I have is a bigger one. I started this one when the shape of the Damascus one I just showed you was a little skinny, and I made this one. This is all 15 and 20. It's a mono steel blade, but it's a 12-inch. It's a 12-inch edge, and so I'm getting there. I haven't quite put an edge on it. I've still got another couple hours of sanding and so on, and then I'll polish this off and put a patina on it of some kind so that the knife doesn't rust so much when you use it. And then I'll put a similar handle on it that I did on. I'll put a similar handle like this on this one as well. But so those are a couple works in progress. It's a big knife.
That's not.
It's a kitchen knife.
So I left Brent's up here on purpose because number one, you can fire back at him now that we know he's in the room, and some of the information that he sent me up on the screen there. And then it reminds me of that Crocodile Dundee knife. I said, no, this is a knife.
What's not a knife? This is a knife.
That's right.
Well, it's funny because one of the vendors I met at IACIS last year contacted me and said, hey, I'd really love to buy a knife off you for my wife for Christmas. And I told him, I said, I would be more than happy to make you a knife, but I do it as a hobby, and I just can't punch a clock, and I don't want to turn into a pressure thing. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm happy to make you the knife, and if you can take it when I get it done, whenever that is. And he was like, absolutely. So this knife is actually built to the specifications of what his wife wanted. So when it's all done, I'll probably take it down to the Florida event, and if he wants it, he can take it. If he doesn't, I'll give it to someone or sell it, whatever. But so that's kind of where those come from. But I've been wanting a good kitchen knife around the house anyway, so I'll probably keep that first Damascus knife. That Damascus steel knife, just because it was my first, and it was such a challenge to make. I've got hours into that knife right now. So
I would definitely like to see that once that's complete. So Richard's messing with you now too. So
they're gonna bust my chops for a while. But yes, Brent brings up the point. Damascus is the capital of Syria, and there's a lot of miscommunication about where Damascus came from and all that. But over the years, Damascus has also become the name of the forge welded steel, whether it's due to a misnomer in history or not. But it's really kind of cool. So
yeah, very cool, man. Those are some really awesome knives. Really awesome knives.
Thank you, appreciate it. I hopefully they'll be kind of neat. I want to make something that's practical, something that looks nice, but as you start investing time into it, and like I said, I've got a lot of hours in both of these knives, it becomes almost an art piece. And I'm picky. I don't want it going out of my shop or out of my garage without it being as close to perfect as I can get it. And because I'm learning, I take everything slow. If I run into it, if I'm out there in the garage and I get stumped on a problem, I learn this the hard way because Brett can tell you, I'm probably not the most patient person in the world. And I was working on a pair of twin knives that I hammered out of a leaf spring that I was going to make for my boys. They were, I called it the twins, and they were basically a deer skinner knife. And they were a deer skinner knife, and they turned out absolutely perfect. And I went through the heat treat process, and my file skated, meaning they weren't as hard as I thought they should be. And so in my frustration of going through this process multiple times, I smacked one of the knives on the anvil and it shattered, telling me it was plenty hard. The file I was using to test it was harder than the knife. So then I got mad and I broke the other one because I couldn't have twins if one didn't work. And then I learned that the difference in hardness and the difference in the hardness of the files, that the file I was using to test with was probably harder than the steel itself. So I ended up investing in what they call a file set to test hardness. And sure enough, those made like 50 HC on the hardness scale, which was, and the file I was testing it with was a 65 hardness. So I learned from that scenario, when you don't know the answer, just step away, take a break, think about it for a day or two, maybe a week or two, and it'll come to me, and then I can go back in there without screwing up, 12 to 15 or 20 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to just take my time. I'm not in it to make money. I'm having fun with it. So
That's right. Hey, the folks over at Parabon want to know if you make axes as well.
yeah, that's funny you ask. I want to make an axe. Axes are a little bit more complicated because you have to drift the eye of the axe in order to get the handle on it, and the Facebook group I'm on, I see axes on there all the time. But I'd like to make an axe. I'd like to make a Damascus axe with Damascus steel personally, but I have not attempted it yet. And so it is definitely down the. Hey Amber, nice to see you. It's down on the list of things to do, but one project at a time. And right now I got two in the making, so I need to get these wrapped up.
Very cool. Very good. Hey, I'm a little curious though, because obviously I know your background, and and we see how people start their career and where they end up, and I'm always curious to ask. So I'm going to ask you as well. Kind of walk us through how in the world. Now we heard a little bit in some of your stories of how you got into digital forensics a little bit, and then ended up going down to IACIS for some of the training. But talk about your career transition and where you're at now.
Sure. I like to tell people I'm in my third career. And in many ways, I'm kind of the poster boy for being able to be successful based on hard work, selective training without having a $40,000 degree. Now, I'm not poo-pooing degrees. I think those are great. And I've got my son going through one now, but I was able to get where I'm at now by identifying what I wanted to do and capitalizing on opportunities. So I started when I got out of high school. I was in construction. I wanted to do law enforcement, but that was pre-Rodney King era, and everybody and their brother wanted to do law enforcement. I remember testing for the Arizona State Patrol, and they had 300 applicants for no hires. It was just to get on the list. Wow. And so that was in the early 90s. And then so eventually I got into construction, started my own business, and I did that up until 2002 when I was framing a house for one of our patrol sergeants in town, and he kind of reignited the fire of law enforcement. So I decided to test with law enforcement. I got hired, and I did that for 11 and a half years, promoted to corporal after a couple of years, then went to detectives. I was in detectives for 6 years. And then I told you how I kind of got into the computer forensics side. Well, when I walked into the class, I was so overwhelmed with what that was. I knew I wanted to be part of it, but I also recognized that in many ways I won the lottery by being able to go sit in that class. In 2007, there were very few forensic jobs out there, but they were starting to grow. And by 2010, it was clear that the private sector was getting very much involved in computer forensics incident response. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point that I kind of realized I won the lottery in a lot of ways. I got some of the best training that I could have ever gotten. If I can fill in any of the gaps in my training and shore up my weaknesses, I might actually be able to do something with this. And then one of my colleagues who teaches the Cypher class, he had already left law enforcement, and he was working for an incident response team with IBM, and he had recruited me in 2010. And I was like, I don't know anything about malware. That's just really not what I want to do. And he said, Gene, I got to tell you, he says, I don't think I've ever been in a data center yet where I've had to move a sex toy or move a meth pipe out of the way in order to get it to the computer. And he says, so if that stuff's wearing on you, he says there's also a feeling, that same feeling you get of finding the bad guy in a child exploitation case, that I got you feeling. You get that same feeling when you're chasing a threat actor through a network. And so he recruited me in 2010. I didn't bite. I promoted to sergeant, was back to the road for a year and a half, and then I went to detectives, and I was still doing forensics kind of on the side. And then he recruited me again in 2013, and I bit. And it was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made. I loved my law enforcement career. I love the people. I love what they do and support. And my hat's off to all those that are still out there doing child exploitation cases, because I know how that taxes your soul as an
Mm-hmm.
examiner,
No doubt.
and that it's a requirement. It's got to be done. We've got to protect our kids. And then I went to IBM, and I'll tell you, the transition was a lot more difficult than I had anticipated. I went to IBM in August of 2013, and it was just a completely different way of doing forensics. It was, dead box forensics versus incident response, very fast paced, know your artifacts. I remember being on a joint call with Randy and a couple other senior incident responders, and we're all looking at the same evidence, and they're showing their findings left and right. And I'm like, where are you guys seeing that? I mean, it was just, and I learned it's a very different way of looking at data, but it's the same education. You're just applying your techniques a little bit differently. So it's kind of like data analytics. You might being able to take a database and pull in data to a database so that you can look at a large set of data at scale, like event logs across multiple systems. You can look at event logs on a dead box system and it applies to that system. But when you start aggregating event logs from 200 systems into a database that you can then query, it really starts telling you a bigger story and a bigger picture. And so that was the transition that I had to learn. And it took me a while. And I'll be honest with you, I almost quit. I went to my boss in December of 2013, and I told him, if you're going to fire me now, because I don't think I've got what it takes. I'm not cutting it, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing with my colleagues. And his response to me, he laughed, and I was like, "What are you laughing at?" And he goes, "Dude, I know exactly where you were when I hired you. You're doing right. You're right where you need to be. And I didn't hire you for your experience. I hired you for your character." And that took the weight of the world off of me. And he told me, he says, "You just keep learning, you keep growing." And so I had that ability, but because we had that conversation, I was able to take a step back. The weight of the world came off of me, and I was able to learn from everybody around me. And I left IBM after 3.5 years when my boss at that time left. He left, and they brought in someone else, and I didn't feel like I could trust him, so I went to another company called SecureWorks. I was only there for about 20 months. Just wasn't a great fit for me, and I got picked up by Strauss Freeburg, and I want to give them a shameless plug if I can, because
Absolutely.
Strauss Freeburg was the first company that was able to talk to that understood the value of why I loved IACIS as much as I did, and why it was also important to me, but also important to them. And they have been super supportive of my ability to give back to the forensic community. They want to give back to the forensic community. And so, we're an incident response team. We're a consultant company. We do a lot of digital forensics, and we do a lot of incident response. Now all that whole field is morphing now with ransomware and panel work and all that stuff. But the support I get from and my colleagues that are also IACIS folks, the support they get from our leadership, it's awesome, and I couldn't ask for a better group of leaders to lead our organization. So that's where I'm at. I've gone from being a manager to a director, and hopefully we'll go to a vice president here in the near future. I currently lead our virtual response team, we call it our virtual lab. But I manage the day-to-day activities of about 10 people on our lab, and so on, and I love it. It's wonderful, and I don't have a degree, and that's the beautiful part of it. Is the training I got from IACIS was my foundation, and I was able to fill in. I went to some competitors, and I don't even consider them competitors to IACIS, but I went to some other commercial training. Um, but if you apply yourself, and I would tell anyone out there in your audience, if I can do it, being a guy that pounded nails for a living in the 90s, you can do it. And if I can do it without a degree, you can do it. Get the right training, focus your degrees, or if you're going to go to school, and I do, master's degree programs have come tenfold since 2007. And so if you can get a degree, focus on a degree that's looking for where you're going, where you want to be, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's pen testing, programming, scripting, etc. But you can also get targeted training at some of the places like IACIS and some of the other commercial training that's out there. Spider Forensics, Samuri, Parabin's got classes, Celebrite's got classes, but don't let yourself get pigeonholed into one thing like cell phones or anything. broaden your skill set, learn about networks, understand network. I took the Cisco Network Academy, and it was probably one of the most educational. It took only just the first semester because it taught me about IP addresses, subnetting, and networks, and the OS layer content and all that. And it was absolutely amazing. I learned a ton. I still got my book, and I refer to it from time to time if I need to remember what a CIDR is.
I have.
So,
Hold on a second. I'm going to see if I can lean back in my seat here a little bit without running over everything. We're getting ready for, well, conference season for that matter. We're going to be down there with you guys for a little bit. And I got literally just swaggling on every side of me right now. Let me see if I can. Oh, right here it is. So when I went down through IACIS, I think, this is definitely where I got this, was our class. This is the book I got when the same class we were in right here. And it's got, I still put my name on it. This is it right here.
Yep. One of the best books out there regarding file system forensics, even though it's a little bit dated and now XFAT is in there, but I understand, and I've never met Brian Carrier, but I hear he is just one of the nicest guys ever. And I'd love to meet him at some point, but I heard through the grapevine a couple of years ago that he's working on another version of that book. It's updated. Now I don't know if that's true. I don't want to start a rumor or put pressure on him, but
I'll ask him
if he is doing that. I'd love to know, because that book, I fell asleep many nights reading that book, trying to understand B lists and B trees and all that. It's just amazing.
I remember the moment that book clicked, and I was like, oh, it was like, it reminds me of that scene from The Matrix, where they're just watching the raw code go by. Oh, blonde, brunette, redhead. And I saw, well, not necessarily blonde, brunette, redhead, but I could see, oh yeah, this is how this links back here. And I can see it now. I see how it's designed and shaped out. It just clicked. And
it's funny because, like you said, when you actually start seeing the data on the disk at the beginning, it is like a matrix. But when you start looking at the madness behind the development of this stuff, it's amazing. I mean, when you look at the history of FAT, started off with FAT 12, and because they were only using so many bytes, 12 bytes to address how many sectors could be available on a disk, and then they realized, oh, if we add a few extra bytes, we can address a bigger disk. And you look at the history of it, and they, you used to have the 8.3, the short file name. And then they realized, if we can modify these directories to where you can take a long file name, people can name it whatever they want with just a few illegal characters. And when you kind of get into the history of it, it's really amazing to see the development of how technology has come a long ways. I mean, and now we're on Windows 11. It's just come out.
Yeah.
Which I haven't updated to. I've got my Surface here. I wanted to wait until after we had this call to update it because I didn't want to break something.
Yeah, that's the way I generally am. I don't touch anything before, like a couple days before we're going to Hubcast. I don't want to mess anything because I don't know. I showed you my screen, what I see, and it's pretty chaotic, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm looking at right now between show notes and all the chats and stuff. So yeah, you don't touch anything. Just but I
see it. I see a question here from Sam Blackburn. If you only have 2 minutes with the machine, what can you get? That is an excellent question because in incident, it depends on what your investigation is. But you give me event logs and the registry out of any system, then chances are I'm going to have a pretty good idea. As long as it's not been overwritten or taken away, I'm going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Just being able to look at event logs in incident response, we see a lot of malware being pushed using PowerShell. Pull your PowerShell event 600s out, and you can actually pull the base code 64 code right out of the PowerShell, find out what it is they're pulling, probably get the IP of the command and control server, the file name that they're downloading, all that stuff, and you can and you get your timeline of when this was done on that system. The registry, you have your file execution in the registry, you have user access in the registry, all that stuff is there. And of course, there's multiple registry files. I like to ask this question in interviews. Name some of the registry files, and everybody goes to the SAM System Security and Software Hive.
I don't know if I could.
But there's the into user.dat. There's the user class, which contains shellbag information, and one they always overlook is the Amcache Hive, which is actually located all by itself in the Windows directory, but it contains a list of all the files that have executed on the system and the SHA value and the date of execution. So it's hugely powerful. So.
Everybody, I can hear pencils going mad, people writing notes and stuff. So the best way to do it, sign up for this awesome training down there. Well, we didn't even mention where it was at, of all places. That's kind of the
Yeah, we
side
kind of slipped up
bonus
on that one.
to it,
We
right?
slipped up on that one. Yeah, we've been doing ever since I've been here. The training has been taught in Orlando or just outside of Orlando. When we went there in 2007, it was in Maitland at the Sheraton.
Yep,
The
yep.
year before that, it was at the Hilton across the street, or just an exit up. When we left the Sheraton, we went to the Marriott, where we were still limited to about 180 to right at 180 or 190 people in the basic class, but we were also limited on being able to grow our specialized classes. And Brent Well was one of the ones very instrumental in actually identifying the Caribe Royale, which is a big, huge resort down it's about 40 minutes from the airport, but it's just south of Orlando, still considered part of the city of Orlando, and it's a huge resort.
It's like a
And
mile from Disney, right? If that.
oh, it's yeah. You actually, if you go out, if you're on an upper floor, you can actually watch Disney do the fireworks every night. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
And
I saw that. I'm
but
like, hmm.
it's amazing. There's 2 swimming pools. I don't remember their count, but their room count. But we're bringing in almost almost 800 rooms for just our event over the course on a nightly basis. And we were able to negotiate, because we have such a huge event. We were able to negotiate some pretty good deals. We get parking waived, we get free internet, we get the resort fee waived. Some of that stuff we get waived because we have such a good event and such a large deal. Such a large number of people that come down. So we're contracted with them through 2023, I think, and we'll start negotiating to see if we can stay there. But the floor space is amazing because there's 2 huge ballrooms, actually 3 now. They built a third one, and we are in the smaller of the 3 right now. But there's tons of breakout rooms, and we want to actually grow. We want to grow this event to where we're maximizing as much of that floor space as we can, because the ability to network here at the IACIS event is unbelievable. Like you said, you're still friends. They came to your
Is
wedding with people that
yep.
you went to school with. I had a row that I was friends with for many years. I think they've all gotten out of forensics over the years. But when I came back on staff, I've met and become friends with many students that came in. I've become friends with many of the staff, and most of my closest friends are IACIS members or staff members that we've grown to appreciate, respect, and despise, like Brent, when they drop little nuggets of details to embarrass you.
Gotta plan the retaliation now, right? Just
Oh yeah, I'm
start the
working on it.
planning now, because April event is coming.
Unfortunately, he's still in lockdown, so he hasn't been able to travel. So
That
once he gets able to travel, I'm gonna have to come up with a mechanism to get him back.
he feels safe right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. But I would take a 2-week quarantine in New Zealand to pay him back.
Oh wait, here he is.
He's just getting started. Oh geez.
Oh, so great.
As long as there's no pictures of me drinking a pina colada in the Keys, I'm okay.
Oh man, that's so great. It's a lot of fun. I guess I'm looking for any questions. Anybody have any questions about IACIS in general overall? Because I know there's a lot of you, and you're just kind of hiding out there in the chat room, because I don't know how many people here live, but a handful of that live are the ones in the chat. If you got any questions, now's the time to ask them, or you can reach out to Gene or Brent or Richard, or I know there's a few others that are hiding here in the room with questions about the training. And there's just a ton of it. I'm going to paste the link here one more time, just so people don't lose it. Make sure I got the right one there. There we go. Oh, Ron went in 09. Oh, awesome.
All right. So
Ron's been pretty
Ron,
quiet.
that means Ron was in the first class that I got at the first event that I was down there on staff with, and I had an absolute blast. And let me just throw this out there too. We are all volunteer, so we are always looking for people to participate, whether it's peer review coach, whether it's serve on a committee, doing something that you enjoy. If you want to do research, create white papers, we're always looking for that. And I think that it's it's all you got to do is stick your hand up and say, I want to do it. But it was a lot of info in just 2 weeks. And we tell you, when you come down there, we're going to feed you with a fire hose. So get ready. But the key is you keep at it, and you're persistent, and you push through.
Oh boy. I can't stress that enough. I keep saying like this. Everybody seems to be shaking my head every time. It's like, but it's not to the point where, oh my gosh, what did I get into? I mean, it's taught in such a way where, I mean, I understood it. And, you said you were pounding nails, right? I was a radio DJ, for crying out loud, before I became a cop. So, anyone can do this, as long as you put your mind to it and really focus on it. And well, I mean, I had a love for technology. That's help, right? I mean, if you got that inner geek in there, that's always a big help. But yeah, you absolutely can achieve this 100%.
If I can do it, you can do it. And I remember being at the pub one night behind the Marriott Hotel, and there was a young gal there from Canada, and she came over and she says, I have a friend of mine that's here with me from Canada, and she doesn't think she can do the certification process. And she says, will you talk to her? So I talked to her for a little while. We spent about 30, 45 minutes chatting and everything. And then I kind of lost track of her, where she was in the process. And she sent me an email after she's certified. And she says, I'm so glad we had that conversation because I didn't think I could do it. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but a little encouragement that, if somebody dumb like me can do it, somebody smart like you can do it better. And what's really amazing is that young gal has now come back on staff. She's teaching the FAT class, and she's a rock star, an absolute rock star.
That's awesome.
And,
we'll toot your horn for you, so you
yeah,
don't have
absolutely.
to. There we go.
Speaking of rock stars, I see Bart Sims on there. He went there in 2015, and we mentioned back in 2012 when we kind of transitioned from all law enforcement to allowing non-law enforcement in. There was a lot of naysayers, and I'll admit I was one of them. I had some concerns about it, about non-law enforcement and losing our law enforcement edge. But, it happened. We brought in law enforcement and everything. And Bart Sims is a great example. He works in incident response. He's in the private sector. He's never been law enforcement to my knowledge. And he's a rock star. This guy is amazing. He serves on our communications committee. He supports our efforts. He's part of the training committee. He's part of the training group. And so, we'll take you in any way you want to donate. We'll take your help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So guys, again, make sure you head over, check out the website. Gene, I cannot thank you enough. I think I got through all the blackmail material that Brent had sent me. So thanks for being a good sport about it too. I really appreciate it. I'm going to make sure there are no chats that come in here at the last minute for us.
I'm not bashful.
I was told ahead of time, so I was like, all right, he can handle this. He's not gonna hunt me down and choke me with one of these knives, or stab me. Right? That was the major concern.
I am really looking forward to meeting you though down at the event. And
I'm looking forward to it.
Anyone else that's here listening in live or listening to it after the recording's over that's coming to the event, take a few minutes, pull me aside. I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm getting older. I got lots of gray hair. I'll remember a face, but it takes me a lot to remember a name. So if I've met you in the past and I don't remember your name, please don't take offense to it. But I would love to meet you. I would love to meet you and pull me aside, find me, look me up. I'll be there for the full 2 weeks this coming event as well. So.
Very good. I'm looking forward to it. Gene, again, thanks so much for coming on and talking about IACIS and a little bit about yourself and some of your hobbies. I really appreciate it. Anytime you guys want to come back on and just hang out and chat, you are more than welcome. And I'm really looking forward to going down to your event.
Kevin, the pleasure is all mine. It's truly an honor to represent this organization. It really is. So it's amazing.
Okay. Again, thanks so much, you guys. And again, any questions, reach out. You can reach some of these guys. I know some of them's in the hub. I know Richard is for sure. We're gonna drag Gene into the hub too. Reach out to him. Oh, there you go. Get the contact information. There you go. Get the contact information, and you can chat with him directly there and reach him that way. Other than that, you guys, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care, and we'll see you again next week. Take care. Thanks, Gene.
Thank you.